Hey, good evening, everyone. Glad to have you here. My name is Gabe Riem. For those of you I haven't met, want to start off with a little bit of a disclaimer. We are here to talk about a bond proposition related to streets that will go to voters May 2nd. The way this came about is the City Council decided in February to bring these propositions so that voters will have the say whether these projects go forward or not. We are not here to convince anyone of to vote one way or another. City staff's role is just to provide information. So if you have a sort of want to debate the merits or that sort of thing, the appropriate place for that is with your neighbors, with your friends. And this is kind of like the TV show Dragnet, stick to the facts, ma'am. So that's why we're here. Move my slide.
Yeah, so the reason it is that way, just so people don't think that the city's trying to skirt it, is it's actually state law that they're not allowed to. They just have to give the information.
You're gonna have to talk in a microphone.
They can't put their thumb on either side. They can't put their thumb on either side of the scale. So I just want everybody to know that that's why it's that way.
That's right. I want to draw your attention to a couple documents. You saw them on the table when you were coming in. So we have an informational newsletter. This will go to every household in Saginaw. I believe it probably should come to your residence sometime in maybe April or so. It's bulk mail, so it's in the process. You may have already received a postcard. Okay, I see someone in the room has that. So that postcard directs you to our bond website, which is saginawbond2026.org. That has all of the information that we're going to discuss tonight. And again, it's information only. It's not advocacy or telling you how or what to vote for. So with that, I'd like to introduce some of people, staff, and elected officials in the crowd, and then we'll get going. So I'll just start here. Pedro is our Communications Economic Development Director. Trent Tidwell is our City Engineer. Paul Rosinski is in the Public Works Department. Corey Smith in the Public Works Department. Randy Newsom, Public Works Director. Councilmember Nick Lawson. Mayor Pro Tem Paul Falegi. Officer Schmidt, keep us orderly tonight. Thank you, sir. Councilmember Mary Copeland. Assistant City Manager Lee Howell. Councilmember Sean Morrison, and working sound, and she actually did my makeup. Just kidding about that. Alina Davis. So I think we have, is that all of our staff? Oh, Diksha in the back, our Finance Director Kim Quinn, she's seated. I think that's everybody. So our agenda, it's pretty simple. We have some graphics some of y'all may have seen already that show the limits of the project. Given a brief overview, we're going to talk about pavement assessment, the phasing of these projects should voters approve, which includes a number of components, the tax rate impact, and then as long as they're matters of factor information, we can address questions. Again, I just want to be, like our council member said, we're not here to debate or politic. That's not the role. It's just to provide information so that y'all can make decisions. So, next slide. So the Proposition A, which is the focus of the town hall meeting tonight, is entirely devoted to street improvements, $38 million. Within the text of the proposition, it outlines the priority streets, which are East McElroy and East Industrial Avenue. They both have the same limits. They go from Saginaw Boulevard to Blue Mound. So both of those streets are major thoroughfares, the same limits for the streets. The reconstruction, if voters approved, would include reconstruction in concrete. It would include curbs and gutters and a storm sewer system. These components are not there currently. Those roadways, sir?
Just for the sake of the recording,
Uh-huh.
can you figure out what's going on with the microphone since it keeps cutting out? As long as it's still recording. The recording's fine. Perfect.
Okay, that's a good point. We are recording this, so your friends, your neighbors who weren't able to attend, we'll have this on our website. We'll do that for all the town hall meetings. You can go back and review if you might have questions or send folks to those, the recorded in the video. Should voters, yeah, no problem. Should voters approve and we complete these projects, if we have remaining funds, we would use street money for sidewalks and neighborhood streets after the 2 primary streets are completed. That is in past keeping with other roadway projects, so if we have savings, then we roll that to the next priority as far as streets go. Next slide. Now I'm going to turn it over to our city engineer to talk about pavement assessment.
So the city of Saginaw has been performing pavement assessments over the last few decades. The last couple times we've done it, we've automated it just to save time and money on staff because it's a lot of effort to go out there and walk every road. We've actually used vans like this where they have lasers and radar mounted so they can scan all the streets. One of the big benefits of giving each road a score, so we score them from 0 to 100, 0 is obviously the worst, 100 is the best, is that we can tailor what type of rehab or what type of fix we do to each road. So for example, roads that score in the 90s or 80s, we may just do a crack seal. Those are the little black lines you see on the roads. But for roads that get lower, like into the 70s, we usually do a mill and overlay. That's still one of the cheaper options where you grind off an inch and then you put back a new asphalt inch. All of these roads that we're talking about today, their scores are below 50, in the 30s, and we've got one road that's actually a 12 out of 100, so it's pretty bad. So all of those fit into the category where we need to completely reconstruct the road. We need to take out all of the existing asphalt or concrete and put in new subgrade and new concrete back where it goes. In addition to that, besides scoring it and figuring out that we need to completely replace the road, staff and council were able to take into context stuff like the amount of road users on the road, the economic benefit, the number of complaints received about the road, and then just other actually damage from some of the city facilities or city trucks that have been used. And we've been able to use that information to prioritize the roads, and that's how we've ended up with East McElroy and Industrial. Do we have that next slide still, Pedro? Okay, so now we're going to look at some drone footage of the roads. Is there another industrial one, or is this it? Okay. So in industrial, something you just see that's really common is this is really old concrete with a lot of truck usage, and so you're seeing a lot of failures at the joints. In addition to the truck, we suspect that the subgrade out here isn't the best, so that's why you're seeing a lot of failures. This road, at least at this point, does have curb and gutter with an internal system, so it's not necessarily the drainage perhaps that's affecting this, but as we go to the next video, I know McElroy has curbs, but there's actually no drainage system along most of East McElroy. So that water combined with the asphalt out here is what's really adding to the deterioration of the road. This is the section that's a 12. I think we're all familiar with it. Had a lot of people mention to me they, play chicken with the other side of the road. Finding the best lane of all 4 of them is kind of the priority. Yeah, okay, and then this is East McElroy headed from Main Street, right? Or no, we're headed towards Main Street. So this would be section 2A. There is some internal storm drain here. One of the biggest challenges in this road is just gonna be coordinating with the railroad. They have pretty specific requirements about putting new pipes under their railroads. So we're gonna work with them to figure out the best plan to drain this road. In addition, as you can understand, there's a lot of permitting that goes on, planning out how to put in new concrete panels, and then we're actually going to add medians in this phase of McElroy so that we could set ourselves up to potentially be a quiet zone if the city decides to move forward with that. We have a couple of other quiet zones in the city at this point, but we haven't decided to make all of them quiet zones. This is the exhibit that we have. We have 2 copies of this exhibit set up right now. So one over there and one behind you. I'm happy to answer any detailed questions after the meeting, but you can see this is 3 phases. It's a little over 1.25 miles if you add all 3 of these phases up together. And like Gabe said, it's stretching from Saginaw Boulevard to Blue Mound. One thing I'll point out in this phase is that we are planning to add a traffic signal at Sansom Boulevard in McRoy. There's a lot of truck users on the south side of that road, and they have a really hard time turning out of there. It's a little bit of a dangerous, oh yeah, that's objective. It's an intersection with challenges. And so I think adding a signal there is necessary. If you want to go to the next one. And then this is industrial. It's about 2/3 of a mile long. We're proposing for it to be a 3-lane section here. But once again, it will be concrete to be able to hold up to all the truck traffic. We will be proposing to modify the signal on the east side. Well, actually, that's actually under construction right now. If you can see this black line right here on the screen, this is actually a project that's ongoing right now that TxDOT's leading. It was funded by some of the developments around the area. But this, the main benefit here would just be that new concrete and a little bit wider to help the traffic flow. You want me to just keep going? Okay. One thing we wanted to illustrate with this project is that when we work with the city, specifically Kim, and if this were to be approved, we do not have access to all the funds immediately. And so tailor that and partner that with the idea of we don't want to just rip up all the roads at all the same time. We want to kind of stagger them. The idea would be we would start with East McRoy. So we highlighted that box green just to illustrate it would be the first step, and we are actually starting on that step now. There are 2 of the 3 McRoy phases that have began design. So that would be McRoy 2A, which is the most west phase, and McRoy Phase 1, which is the most east phase. The main reason we started on 2A was just to start that coordination with the railroad and go ahead and get those permits rolling, which we've already started on, so that's not on the critical path, trying to complete the roads. The lower timeline here would be industrial, and the idea is that we would stagger the start of that design once Kim and team decide that we can issue those funds, and then that construction would start later than the East McRoy construction. Potentially, which this is different for most of the projects we've done in Saginaw, I could potentially see these 2 phases of construction overlap if we decide to do so. And that's just in an effort to get the projects delivered in a timely manner and not let inflation catch up to our budgets that we set. Utility relocation, so we've talked about the storm systems that would be a part of the scope of each of these projects. In addition, we work with city staff to identify any water lines or sewer lines that need to be replaced. Luckily, most of these corridors, the water line is either outside of the road or in decent condition, but there are a few phases where we'll be replacing an aging water line just to make sure that the water line can outlast the pavement and that we're not rebuilding the road again in the future. I think something else we wanted to hit on here is that in addition to the design, we also coordinate with franchise utilities just to make sure that they're out of the way before we start construction. So you'll see out here on McRoy, this is Phase 3 by City Hall and the library. Atmos is relocating a lot of their gas lines and replacing them because we're about to start construction in a few months on this phase of McRoy, which is part of the last bond program. So ideally, we're working with them. Unfortunately, they could cause delays if they decide not to partner with us and be efficient with their designs and their relocations, but we do our best to get them relocated in a timely manner. What's the next slide? Okay, so we talked about this. Just want to reemphasize that every project would have curb and gutter and internal storm drain systems just to keep that road off, or the water off the road as quickly as possible. This will really help extend the life of the pavement, and so that combining that with the concrete pavement should really give us should really extend the lifetime of these roadways. Okay, I don't think this is my slide. Thank you.
So All of these propositions, everybody hear me, have a tax rate impact. That is how cities fund large-scale capital projects because if you think of in your personal life, if you were to go purchase a home, very few people could save up and do that. You need to borrow and then pay that off over time. Bonds are also, in terms of fairness, a way where cities can fund improvements that future taxpayers have to pay for. So if you think of a project that voters approved in 2021, the bonds have been issued, and I'm a resident. Y'all are residents and taxpayers. That bond is paid off over a time period where future residents are also, through the tax rate, paying for a portion of the project. If we just saved up money, just had cash, then the tax rate burden would be on current taxpayers and everybody in the past. So it's kind of if you think about it, it's a fair way to spread the cost of the improvement that has a significant life. So I want to draw your attention. You will get this at your home, the informational mailer. So the largest proposition is the one we're talking about, streets. On an average assessed value home, which is $253,230. Now I want to clarify that. There's been some confusion. The assessed value is not the same as what the market value might be of your home. The appraisal district assesses property and determines the taxable value. That is what the city uses, and should voters approve, that would be the number we use that dictates how much homeowners pay. So the taxable value, the average from last tax year is $253,230. So we have run estimates based off of that. If voters approve Proposition A, which is almost 64.5% of the total bond package, the average impact on that average tax value home would be $225.31 annually. Our senior property owners in the city, we have one of the highest exemptions in the county of $100,000. So the way an exemption works is you take $100,000 of taxable value, and that's removed from tax purposes. So a senior homeowner would pay $136.33. Some questions? Yeah, Judy?
Yes, okay, so if I'm gonna pay $225 a year on my taxes for these streets, when does that $225 start? Does it start at the time of the election? Does it start at the time of the first, how are we paying that $225, and are we paying that over 20 or 30 years?
Right.
Or is it going to gradually increase from maybe $15 a year up to
Sure.
the $225?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the question was, when would a property owner pay $225 annually? It would take approximately 5 years to get up to that total amount because we will issue the bonds when we need them. We'll issue them in a, should voters approve, disclaimer. We'll issue them for design money and then as the phasing is needed. It's not going to be issued all at once and then next year your tax bill potentially could be that amount higher. It's a great question. Yes, ma'am.
Just to clarify what you just said, so should the voters approve this next month or May or whatever, then it would start this year?
So
Design had started, or?
no, so that's a great question. I'm repeating I heard you. I'm just repeating it just in case anyone is watching this. The question was when that would happen, right? So the design that Trent mentioned on some of these roadways is already funded from the past bond. The city council decided based on the pavement condition scores and because of the travel at some of these phases, the worst, I believe, East McElroy was the worst rated street. So the worst rated street section in the city is East McElroy, which is approximately Lavon to Blue Mound on pavement condition. Design has already begun, is already paid for, and then design from Saginaw Boulevard on East McElroy to, what's the limit to Spring Hollow, design has already begun. That was using 2021 bond money. the rationale behind that, and I talked with someone in the crowd who had had some dealings with the railroad, is that the design process and the review process is extended due to the railroad and the state. So the city council made the decision to start design now, about a year in advance, and knowing that it's going to take a very long time to have the railroads and the state review and approve. So it's a great question. So to summarize and answer the question, on East McElroy, design has already started and is already paid for. On Saginaw Boulevard to Spring Hollow and, Lavon to Blue Mound. I will say, we didn't mention, it's not bond related, but a portion of industrial is under construction now. That would be from Fuel City to 600 feet to the west. That was a multi-agency project. 80% of that was paid by the Texas Department of Transportation. The city was a participation. Fuel City participated. Tarrant County participated. Am I missing anyone? Fort Worth had a contribution. So that section is already under construction and funded. You can go out there when we conclude and see it. So should voters approve, the remaining would be from that 600 feet, which is approximately the end of Fuel City, and then heading to the west to Saginaw Boulevard. Good questions.
Part of my question was answered. It was going to be from the black line, which is basically the end of Fuel City's parking lot to Main, is what we're talking about doing on Industrial, because we won't have to redo that intersection.
That's correct. Yeah. One thing I might add, Trent, we had a slide about, and this is maybe a common misconception about why do projects take so long. So the utilities that are underground we call them franchise utilities. They're privately owned, but they're companies you and I would all recognize. Atmos and the cable companies, Energy Transfer, so natural gas, that project, I forget, Randy, it was like 100-some utility locates. 111 utility conflicts in 600 feet of pavement from Blue Mound to west of Fuel City. So these projects, although they're city projects and they're city streets, the city does not control all the levers and gears. And when you factor in the intersections with the railroad and when we approach the state, TxDOT has to review and approve. So I wish it were simple and I wish it were a lot quicker, but it just, that's the hand we're dealt.
I had a question about industrial Ooh, howdy. I had a question about industrial specifically. So I know we're surrounded by Fort Worth, and a lot of times we share roadways with them. So for example, on Old Decatur, the west side is Fort Worth, the east side is Saginaw or Longhorn, the south side is Fort Worth, the north side is Saginaw. On industrial, there's a good 20 to 25% of it west of the railroad tracks that is Fort Worth. And there's like 4 big warehouses that are constantly putting 18-wheelers on that road. Is Fort Worth at all involved in this project? Or, and maybe you could explain kind of how that works. I know sometimes maybe they do a road project and our citizens benefit from it, kind of thing. I just want to understand kind of how that is working.
Yeah, it's a good question. So the question was, is Fort Worth involved in the industrial project? And since we're neighbors, how kind of everyone's involved. So I've been with the city since January of 2018. When I started, Old Decatur was under construction. There was a replacement of a water line at that time that Fort Worth initiated. Because of that, Fort Worth contributed to replacing the pavement. So we got a new street. Now that project, as many street projects go, was delayed and had some hiccups, and it took a very long time. So the city got the benefit of that being paid for by Fort Worth. Industrial, the street and the right-of-way is fully within the city limits of the city of Saginaw, so it's the city of Saginaw's responsibility. I might address another kind of a misconception I have heard, and that is, why don't some of the industrial users pay more? Because there's truck traffic and a lot more impact to the street system than our houses, right? Just traditional passenger vehicles. Any property that has taxable value in the city of Saginaw, should voters approve, would contribute to this project through a portion of their tax rate. So I was talking with somebody earlier, and I'll give you an example. So one of the flour mills, back in 2021, voters approved a new library and senior center. That had a tax rate impact. That increased the tax rate to pay for this very building we're in now. The reality is, let's say the flour mill, do they get a direct benefit from a new library and senior center? Maybe not, but they shared in the payment of that. I've also seen comments about why can't we charge a roadway impact fee. So roadway impact fees are a way to build new streets, not to rehab existing streets. If we were to assess a street fee in the future, this is something that would require a study, and you can't have one class of property owner paying one amount and another not paying another amount. So Fort Worth recently went through a street maintenance fee exercise, engaged a consultant. They have not implemented a maintenance fee, but that could potentially in the future be a way where we would have more street maintenance fund based on kind of the impact to the street system. So like a property, a major retail shopping center that generates a lot of traffic, that's going to impact a street more than our neighborhood streets where you and I all live. So good.
You're also paying a lot more in property tax than homeowners are because of the size of the buildings and stuff that they have.
Yeah, the comment is, and especially the industrial users, they're paying more in property tax. That's correct. That's because their taxable value that's assessed by TAD is much higher. The industrial users and some of our commercial businesses are also employers in the city. So something to keep in mind. Next slide. Is that the last one? Yeah, that's it. Yes, sir.
I hear a lot, I knew you was coming. Yeah. So I hear a lot on that, we get taxed on gas and why isn't that feeding into this? Why are we having to go? Why isn't already the money we're paying able to cover this? So if you could explain kind of how this works and where the actual money, lack thereof money coming from the state for local roads, that'd be good.
Yeah, the question is, you pay gas tax at the pump, why does that not pay for streets? It does not go to local governments. That's the simple answer. So.
But we do benefit from the dollars that we pay. We do benefit from the dollars, like Blue Mound 156 was just done with state money.
Correct.
So it maybe doesn't do some of the smaller arterial roads, but
You're right.
Yeah,
So that would pay for federal projects, federal highway system, and state projects, TxDOT. And to your point, Saginaw Boulevard and Blue Mountain Road are state highways, so they're not maintained by the city. That's maintained by the state, which is good and bad because there's a lot of things, especially with signal timing on those roadways, the city can't do a thing about it because we don't control it. Now, the devil's advocate side is we don't have to pay for the improvements either. So all of us here as residents and taxpayers. Yes, ma'am.
Could you clarify again, please, when the tax increase would start?
Yeah. Do you want to go to the phasing? I can talk off that. So the question was when the tax increases would start. Should voters approve these bonds, which is the $38 million? Just want to recap. Design for the worst section in the city, objective, the pavement assessment is already funded. It's under design. That likely would be our first construction contract.
Yes, if you want to.
Yeah, I'll throw it at you.
I'll just point out, Gabe, that the 2B section that's in the middle is the only portion of East McRoy that is not currently under design. So I would believe that that would be your first issuance of funds for this portion would be the design of 2B. So the specific timing on that would be, that might be your first time it
Right.
actually increases.
And ballpark 20,
If we want to start construction in 2028, and we've already started design on Phase 1 and Phase 2A, I would think, it would be later this year, if approved, that we would start the design on 2B, so we can incorporate it all into one design package and one bid package for contractors.
so to answer the question, likely would not affect this year's tax rate, but next year's tax rate, if approved, a portion of, not the total impact, we would issue the debt in as we need it. So, not this year, but next year likely. It's a good question.
You looking at 2028 as beginning, if everything gets approved and everything, you look at 2028 as the start?
Yeah, the question is 2028 as the start of construction, and that would be the earliest. Design is already underway in a couple of sections as we've discussed, but yeah, 2028. And to back up, why we wouldn't, part of the rationale for selecting these streets to bring to voters is, of course, the pavement condition, but they're major thoroughfares. So let's say, and this would not happen, let's say we're gonna, there's no way, let me back up. There's no way we could reasonably construct portions of or all of both roadways. They're major east-west corridors. We couldn't block the city off. I mean, we're not TxDOT on 35. I'm just kidding. So, and we followed the same approach in our 2021 bond. So our 2021 bond, the street component of that was 37.5 million ballpark. We've completed Knowles from Bailey Boswell to Longhorn. What's remaining from the 2021 bond is where we're at now, from Knowles all the way to Saginaw Boulevard. That is yet to be constructed and already paid for within the tax rate. So again, the rationale is you don't want too many major corridors under construction all at once. Does that answer the question, or am I overly complicated? Yeah.
2028 start date potential.
Uh-huh.
Does that include the utility? Does that include the utility movements or the actual construction on the roads?
The question is, does utility relocation, would that happen before 2028?
Yes, the plan would be to finish the design, relocate the utilities, and acquire all the right-of-way, get the permits we need from the railroads, and the design approved by TxDOT. That'd be the goal. I know, you are doing your exercise.
Getting in your steps today. So I've read somewhere this is planned as a 20-year bond, and generally bonds in Texas are 20 years minimum, correct? Ish, yeah. So this is planned for the roads. So when would that 20 years begin? Is that from when the voters approve it or don't approve in May of 2026, or is that after like all the phases are issued? Like, yeah.
So it's a good question. The question is, what's the length of the project as far as the tax rate's concerned? The roadway portion would be 24 years. It'd be amortized over 24 years. That payment begins when the bonds are issued. That is not the same as voter approval. And again, like we mentioned, we would issue, assuming voters approve, that in chunks. And the way that happens is bonds that a city, as a government entity, can issue carry a much lower interest rate than what you and I can borrow. The reason being, the interest on municipal bonds is tax exempt. So investors buy municipal bonds because when they buy a bond as an investment, all the interest off that, they don't have to pay income tax. The net effect is cities and local governments are able to issue at a lower interest cost to all of our benefit as taxpayers. But yeah, to answer the question again, it begins when it's issued. And so our 2021 bond We just issued the last amount of authorization in 2025. So it takes some time, and again, that's dependent on project needs.
And so that amount, the chart that showed like the different amounts of like monthly, annually, and if you're a senior, that amount, whenever it's fully phased out, we would be responsible to pay that for around 24 years
Correct.
per year. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
There's a few kind of, I don't want to get into the weeds too much, but there's a few kind of technical caveats. Because municipal bonds are issued at a lower interest rate, they cannot be refinanced for a period of 10 years. This is called being callable. After 10 years, municipal bonds can be refinanced, and there's been a few times we're advised when we refinance existing bonds to lower the interest rate, which means all of us pay less. Yeah. So somebody had asked something to the effect of, you know, why don't we wait until we have the money or the capacity? As we pay off bonds each year through our tax rate, we have some capacity opens up. And it depends on how the bonds are scheduled, but it would be a few years before we had any capacity, you know, to do other projects, absent an impact on the tax rate. Yes, sir.
On McElroy and, yeah, mainly McElroy because of the two lanes going each way, is the thought to restrict it to one lane each direction, or is it complete closure so they can operate faster?
So, yeah, should voters approve, and I'll defer because no one likes delays, I think we would always have traffic operational. If voters approve you know, we have industries that need to move, so could you address that? That would be something we determine, yeah.
We've looked at the initial phasing of those two phases that are under design, and we're planning on having one lane of traffic in each direction during the construction.
Question in the back there, yeah.
I have some good news. Typically, historically in our city, we do estimate the tax rate to be, it's actually the worst case scenario. And historically, we have not actually, since I've been on city council, met that higher rate. We've always been lower than that. And another thing that was pointed out to me recently by our finance director, which I had never thought of, while we are paying off these loans, the money that is sitting there is also earning interest. So that's something to keep in mind. So it can look like a bleak picture, but it usually doesn't end up being that bleak.
Was there another?
Ladies first, is that right?
In the diagram, is McElroy going to be 2 lanes both ways with no turn-in lanes? So there's no, so whatever's in the left lane's going to stop indefinitely?
Correct. Yes,
Doesn't sound very efficient.
The right-of-way in that section is pretty tight. You can see some of the right-of-way lines, which is the city property lines, how tight they are. Even to get the full 4 lanes and widen it to 12-foot lanes, we are still having to get right-of-way in some of those sections. So being able to get at least 60 feet of pavement, and then you have additional parkway space, and then for McElroy, we're planning on having a sidewalk at least on one side of the road. That would require significant right-of-way acquisition, which would be really impactful to a lot of the existing businesses and homeowners in this area. So 4 lanes is the proposed section. With the caveat, I will add, at Sansom Boulevard, we have extra space there, so we are planning on having separate left turn lanes for that signal. Yep, and the signal would operate better too with separated left turn lanes.
You probably mentioned this before, but I can do it again. What is the
So, I have not looked into the industrial phase as much. I'm hoping it would still be under 2 years in total length. The McRoy section, since we're combining it all into one project, I'm optimistic we can keep it around 2 years. And while we keep that traffic going. Yeah. Do what? Yes, the question was, sorry, I'm not as good at that. The question was about how long will these phases last? So my response was that we're hoping that the McRoy project would be just over 2 years. I expect the industrial project to be less, so I'm looking at a little less than 2 years. But that would be just the construction.
Okay, I got a two-part question for you. One, what are we designing the life expectancy of the road for? And then two, within your design, how are you going to make sure that that road lasts that long? What tools or technology are you using to ensure it's designed to meet the need?
Okay. So when we design a pavement section for a road, we're talking about the pavement section, correct? The question was, how do we ensure that the pavement will last the design life, and what is the design life? So the design life for streets that we use in Saginaw is 30 years. We are able to meet that design life by doing a study of the actual soils. So we'll get bores, we'll dig about 15 feet deep every 500 feet along a road. That way we can look at the type of dirt that's under the road. Is it clay, is it sand, does it need lime treatment, does it need cement stabilization? So with that, and then the estimated amount of truck traffic, so we'll collect how many trucks are driving there now, and we'll project that to grow based on projections. We're able to use those numbers to design a pavement section that will last 30 years or more. The second half of your question was, how do we make sure it actually gets there? So that's really crucial, in my opinion, when it comes to asphalt roads. So asphalt roads, to get to that 30-year design life, you have to do a lot of maintenance. We talked about that earlier, crack sealing, mill and overlay, stuff like that. With concrete roads, there's a lot less maintenance required, but one thing we do still focus on is when there are cracks, we want to route those and seal them so that the water's not getting underneath. But the other thing, in my opinion, that really helps those roads last is just a really well-designed storm drain system. And then if there are any utilities that need to go in, we need to make sure we do full panel replacements rather than letting them do half panel replacements with trench failures that usually occur about 5 years later. So that's how we kind of protect the design life of the concrete roads. We're learning some engineering today.
Some of the last large pieces of like open land that the city has are off of Industrial and McElroy. And I've seen some signs on some of those open pieces of land, future home of Norton Metals or DFW Plastics. Like, I'm a little surprised that Industrial is only gonna be one lane in each direction and a turn lane. Is that road ever, like, is it available to be expanded? Or like, did we do a traffic study that, like, if these companies build that's going to be enough capacity?
Address that?
Yeah. We do a traffic study when we start the road design for the specific road, but the only study we've done so far for, say, Industrial would be when we did the entire city's master thoroughfare plan. So when we did look at that, we did determine that this road only needed 3 lanes. One of the misconceptions about a 3-lane road is that it's not half the amount of traffic that can go through a 4-lane road. So on average, I think when you look at traffic generation and lane capacities, let's say a 4-lane road, each lane you can consider 500 cars. I think that's in the peak hour. When you look at a 3-lane road, because of that center turn lane, those single lanes can do 800. And so if you say, 10,000 in each direction on a 4-lane road, you're looking at 800 in the single one. So it's a lot more efficient because of that center turn lane.
What will be the maintenance approach to these roads before construction by the city?
Yeah, the question is, what was the maintenance approach before construction? So, we're at a point, given the pavement condition score, where it doesn't make financial sense to put a significant amount of money into the existing roadways. We've already talked about the proposed enhancements, which would be storm sewers. So the answer is very minimal. We'll keep them passable until at such point we have the ability to reconstruct them. The last on East McElroy, the last significant expenditure was an overlay. The section was Lavon to Spring Hollow? No, not that far.
It was about that, but also, y'all did the section between the railroad tracks, correct? So there is a line in the sand at some point where I think the staff and council have to make a decision of, are we gonna put money, any more money into this road, knowing it's gonna be completely reconstructed in the future? So, yeah, the last handful of projects we've done on East McElroy were the curb and gutter replacements we did along East McElroy. That was 8 years ago or so. And then that section that we partnered with the county on, so that's like the only decent asphalt you see out there on East McElroy. That's what we did between Spring Hollow and Lavon. And then the most recent one was between the railroad tracks. Was that the county as well that did that? We partnered with the county to save money on that. So yeah, I'll leave it up to the staff and city to decide that, but I believe that line in the sand of, no more investment in it, we're about there.
I wanted to say, on industrial, we did reach out to the county. Just to answer it. We did reach out to the county to get an overlay on it, and the county looked at it, and they came back and said, you're throwing your money away. That it's a past that point. So we did look at seeing if we could extend the life of industrial by putting an overlay on it, and they came back and said no.
So one thing I mentioned is the plan is to do a pavement assessment about every 3 years.
5 years.
5 years, sorry, which is kind of like a progress report. So when we have our next pavement assessment, we'll be able to see, what the scores are of all city streets, and that will help prioritize where either maintenance money, the maintenance money goes. So
I suppose you get a deterioration rate from that 5 years difference?
that's correct. Yeah.
Second question is, maintenance during construction, how are you defining what the contractor, in what shape should the driving lanes remain in at all times while they're in the construction?
He's a public works director, so this isn't fair. I'm getting grilled by the professor. That's a challenge, honestly, that we have had, especially on Knowles too, just keeping the drive lane drivable. I think a strategic part of that is just making sure where you're proposing that storm drain system to be is under the first phase of the pavement. That way, they're not completely ripping up, a 12-foot trench, trying to patch it and then put them back on the traffic. But one thing the city has going for them really good is one of the best inspectors I've ever seen, Bill Hurst. And so he holds a really high bar when it comes to keeping those lanes drivable. But like I said, we'll partner with him just to try to minimize the amount that we're tearing up a road and then putting traffic back on that interim fix.
Kind of going back to the first part of his question. So say, for example, if the bond does not pass, is there going to be future maintenance on McElroy, or are you going to wait for that pavement assessment, the 3 years, and see where it is at that point?
So recent changes to the legislature since our last bond, if the bond does not pass, we cannot bring another bond proposition back for 3 years. So we would likely on these roadways, since we don't have the funds to reconstruct, do as little as possible to try to extend them for whatever life is possible.
I have like a two-part question. So earlier you had mentioned about West McElroy being like part of the 2021 bonds, and that was issued last year. So that like those ones that were just issued, which would show up, I guess, in this year's tax appraisal, So that would be in addition to this East McElroy that we're talking about.
Would not be an addition, it's already reflected in the tax rate.
That's already reflected in the, okay.
Yeah,
got it.
the question is, sorry to repeat and follow my own rule. The question is, the projects from 2021 that are not finished yet, would there be tax rate impact? The answer is no. It's already, since the bonds have been issued, it's already reflected in the current tax rate. It's a
Okay.
great question.
And then second part of the question, I don't know if everyone here's seen the kind of future renderings, but there's a rendering out there that shows Western Center someday, when it gets funded, aligning with East McElroy and kind of realigning McElroy to Western Center. I guess kind of the easiest way to put it is, why are we paying to do that section of McElroy from Levon to Blue Mound when we could just build the connection to Western Center now, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, so the question or the comment is that Western Center will extend to the west in the future. So that is development driven. The developer, when they choose to build upon that property, is required to install that roadway extension. The condition of the easternmost section of McElroy is such that who knows when land would develop, right? And when that happens in the future, the capacity could still be utilized on the existing East McElroy. One thing I forgot, and I don't want to keep us here all night, although I find this interesting, do this for a living. We created a financing district called a tax increment reinvestment zone a few years ago. East McElroy is in the tax increment reinvestment zone from Spring Hollow all the way back to Blue Mound. This is the easiest way I can explain this. It's like a savings account. The city contributes 50% of the tax value into the TERS fund. The county contributes 50% of county money into the TERS fund, and Tarrant County College contributes 50% of the taxable value for those taxing entities in the TERS fund. We can then use that money for qualified projects within the boundaries of the TERS. We set this up intentionally to include East McElroy in the TERS, knowing that it would need infrastructure assistance in the future. The likely reality is the TERS will be able to fund a portion of East McElroy as value grows in that designated area. So this is something that was very intentional. Someone had mentioned that when we do our tax rate projections, we're very conservative in our projections. And this has been the city's stance for decades. So the Bailey Boswell project back in 2012, I think when that went to voters, had a potential 13-cent tax rate impact. And I think the final tax rate impact ended up being 8 cents. So we're showing the worst case scenario so that voters are informed and can make a decision. We hope for the best, and we have some tools that may potentially offset that.
One thing I'll just add, great question about the ultimate alignment of McElroy as it connects to Western Center. The discussions, the initial conceptual discussions we've had with those renderings has been that the existing McElroy section would still be utilized. I think that's what Gabe was saying too. It wouldn't be demolished and completely removed.
It's kind of like Old Decatur and Marine Creek is, you know, like it's kind of like Old Decatur and Marine Creek. Like the traffic is kind of encouraged to stay on Marine Creek, but you can still turn off onto Old Decatur. So that part of McElroy from Levon to Blue Mound would still be usable, but it would be like the light will keep people on Western Center and curve them onto McElroy. Okay, got it. And the whole goal of investing in infrastructure is to encourage development and increase property values. So hopefully XYZ company decides to stay here and expand and have more jobs and yada, yeah.
I'm just going to stare awkwardly just to make sure. No. Hey, thank y'all for coming out. If there's no other questions, I think we're dismissed. Just want to remind you again, I think some of y'all have got the postcard already. That is going out. You should receive one if you haven't already. This mailer that is available on the back table will go out to all addresses in the city. We have 2 more town hall meetings scheduled, one for Proposition B for park improvements, and then the final one for Proposition C, which is an animal shelter. So thank you so much. Y'all could probably get a job as a low-level engineer now. I'm going to try. So I learned a lot tonight. Thank you.